So a little bit of warning for this one. Grab yourself a cup of tea, settle in, because it's a little bit of a long one. So some of you may know some of the issues I've been having recently, which is all to do with this video, and you'll see things that went wrong, things that went right, a little bit of investigating on my part, reaching out to people for help, but good news is we got there in the end, and this is what this video is all about. A few people I just want to thank, so while you're making a cup of tea, I'll just rattle through a few thanks. Once you get your cup of tea, the video will start. I want to thank Liam at Kaizen, kept in touch with me kind of through this, sent me a few things to help me out, just to help with the investigation, and which helped me get to the bottom of it. Richard Ellis at Dino Days, he responded to my cry for help, as well as Matthew from Tactical Racing. Thank you for that. Also had a few subscribers and guys part of the FN2 community who kind of just kept in touch with me and asking how things were going. So Gareth at Expression Culture, thank you for that. Who else did we have? We had K20 Lyle. He's been kept in touch and asking how things have been going, and also Robster VTech. He's been kind of keeping in touch with me as well. So I hopefully I've not missed anybody, but yeah, I just want to thank you all for supporting, for answering my questions out online, or even just reaching out. It meant quite a lot, and even more satisfying to know that the job's done now, and hopefully you can now all enjoy a cup of tea and watch the video. And let me know in the comments what you think of this. If you've got any other questions or you think I've missed something, feel free to put a comment in, and I typically answer them all. So here goes. Hey everybody, welcome along to Type R Tweaks. Today's video, Kaizen fuel rail time. So I've probably been waiting to do this for 3-4 weeks now. Fuel rail came, but I decided I wanted to change out all the seals as well and the injectors while I had everything out. I've seen a few folk changing the fuel rail without changing the injectors, or planning to do the seals later on. I just decided just to try and do it all in one go. So that's what today's video is all about. I was going to do a video on changing out some of the hoses, so some of them have actually already been done. Those who follow the Type R Tweaks on Instagram will have seen the picture on there of the engine bay with some of the hoses changed, but now we're going to do the fuel rail. So here goes. So main thing first is pretty much just trying to get this sort of heat shield off. You'll see some of the hoses have been changed on here already, but yeah, for the fuel rail, get this off first and get into it. There you go, one-handed. So you can see the existing fuel rail that we're going to be taking off. So this part here, this is actually just all the sort of connector cables. With this plastic cover all comes out as well. So it looks like we've got a couple of bolts here to take out to release the fuel rail, but we do need to be taking off the fuel rail here. You just need to slide this green clip back to actually get it out here. There will be some excess fuel in here, and if anybody's been filling up with V-Power recently, you'll probably lose about £3 worth. No, I'm only kidding. You'll lose some in here, so just we can put some microfiber cloth or kitchen roll or something down here just to capture that so it doesn't go anywhere. And we need to take out these connectors as well, just to release all that, and then we'll be able to get, you'll see the injectors just underneath. Now, because of the seals that are on these, it will take a little bit just to wiggle free, but once we get it out, we'll be able to see what we're working with. So that's all the connectors off from the injector. Simply just squeeze the top here and pop them off. all 4 of them. And then for this plastic cover, you'll see the small bracket here that's attaching this to the fuel rail. You just need to pull these little tabs back, lift off, and there's another one over this side as well, and that releases that. Now this plastic cover, like I said before, this just comes off and gets discarded for putting the new fuel rail on, and it's just the cables that are left that plug into the injectors once everything goes back together. So that's the plastic cover off. You'll see you can't really go wrong. Even if you tuck these cables way back, they naturally fall kind of back into position of being ready to hook into the injectors, so there's no real issues of thinking you're going to get these mixed up and cause issues. That's not really going to be the case. So that's me got just some kind of kitchen paper to get ready for disconnecting this. These are 12mm bolts, so we'll get them off, get them loosened and take this off, and then hopefully try and wiggle fuel rail free. So that's those 12mm bolts out. You will need to keep these to attach the new fuel rail onto here. So a little tip: once you get the fuel rail off and disconnected, you know, you could turn this pipe up so that nothing more is going to come out of that, and also just to kind of plug where the fuel injectors go in, just to make sure there's no any sort of dust or debris or anything gets in there before you put the fuel rail, the new one, back on. So if you remember the little green clip that was plugged in here, you will need to keep that so that you can put that on the pipe coming out of the new fuel rail. So just to recap, you need to keep this, and you also need to keep the 2 12mm bolts from your original fitting to put onto the new fuel rail. So here's my little setup for changing these out. So we've got the new fuel rail here, and this is the old one that you've seen, and you can see the seals look okay, a bit grimy in some places. That's what I thought. It's, you know, it's worth changing them out. So you've typically got a seal in here on the injector, and you've got 2 at the bottom. So as you can see, got some seals already here. So we need to get these out. So you need to remove these clips. Now these clips you don't have to keep for the new fuel rail. So you can discard them. So we're going to take all these out. There will be some fuel still in here, so you just have to put some sheets down to collect anything that does come out. So sometimes these little clips you can, you know, just pull them off. Or sometimes you just have to get a screwdriver in sides just to pop them off. Easy as that. So that's the old seals off. They just pretty much pull off, no real issues. We'll give this a little bit of a clean up, and then we'll put the new seals on. So that's all the new seals on. Top one, this kind of brown one near the bottom, and then the little black seal. So these are all about to fit to the fuel rail. Just a handy tip to know, for these sort of brackets facing you, this is the way it'll fit in the car. This little connector obviously goes to the back, so this is really how you want to fit them on before offering it up to the car. Just a little handy tip there. So I'm actually going to apply some good old PTFE tape onto just some of the threads, and I'm also going to be fitting the hybrid racing gauge. Again, put some PTFE thread on the PTFE tape, sorry, on the thread before fitting that here. So that's all the injectors fitted, new seals on, into the fuel rail, everything's all tightened up. Well, that didn't work. First, my camera ran out before I finished that last little bit. I actually had it fitted to the car, fired it up, and if those of you who follow me on social media or are in the modified FN2 group would have seen my cry for help here. So guys, needing a wee bit of help. So I've got the car, I've turned the ignition, I've not quite started it yet, just to make sure there was no leaks when fitting this Kaizen fuel rail. Everything seems to be okay, no leaks here, no leaks from actual injectors, nothing coming out of here. We seem to be holding pretty good pressure, but when I actually start it, seems to be running like a little go-kart. Any ideas? So clearly something wrong with the injectors. Now I gave the fuel rail a little bit of a blowout, because sometimes during the manufacturing process there can be still bits of debris or things inside that, so I gave it a little blowout, but I've obviously never done it enough. Another theory is the PTFE tape that you put on the gauge, there's maybe some of that that's came off and has got stuck in an injector. So I need to do a wee bit of investigation and work out what injector's not working. So I bought myself a little kit to test the injectors, so I'll give them a try. I'll show you the kit and show you what that does, to hopefully try and iron out what the problem is. So this is the sort of little device that I've got, an injector tester really. So you pretty much hook it up to your battery, plug these little connectors in, and then you've actually got 4 modes that you can put this through, so that you can tell if the injector is actually firing. So like I say, you can set it to different modes to really test it out. So that tells you if the injector is actually operating. And I've got a little additional device that will actually allow me to put fluid into the injector. Whilst it's pulsing, it'll tell me what sort of if I'm getting any fluid through that. So we'll give that a try, see if it works. So unlike a few things that you get when there's no instruction, this one actually comes with instructions, so you can see the different modes and what they actually do, what sort of pulse they give you. And so I'm just going to put it on mode 2 just to see if I can get those, if I can hear the clicking of the actual injector working, and see how that goes. So that's me hooked up to the battery, and I've set it on mode 2 that you'll see there, and I've hooked it up to the injector itself. So when I push pulse, it'll then go through mode 2, which is just a series of pulses, and hopefully you can hear that on the camera as well. So you can see that tells us that the injector is actually operating. I just need to make sure I'm getting flow through this, and that's what I'm going to put the other device on it and put some fluid in here and see what comes out of it. So you've seen there that by just connecting up, you can hear the injector kind of firing away. So what I've got is I've got this kind of little device, put it on top of this sort of injector cleaner, and attaching the injector to that. So once we plug it in, that'll be firing away, and then we just press down on this can and it pressurizes some fluid through the injector, and I've got a kind of little basin here just to see what it's firing out like. I'm not measuring flow or anything like that, I just want to make sure that there's fuel coming out, or there's fluid coming out when the injector's firing, and I'm going to do that on all 4 of them to try and get down to the problem. If one of them's not giving me anything, then I know that's that injector must be blocked. So here goes. So I don't know if you can see, but where that gauge goes in, you can see a little bit of PTFE tape still there. Now I've took the gauge off, but there's still a wee bit of evidence of PTFE tape. And when you look at the thread on here, that full thread was covered. So some of it you can still see in here, but I'm just wondering how much of that actually made its way into the injectors. I've had a look right down here, and that only seems to be the thing. It's the only part that there seems to be evidence of something that might give us a clue. But I've done all the injectors now, They've all been operated, we've sprayed through them, they're all producing quite a good flow. Again, not measured it, but it just seems to be fluids coming out when they're operating. So I'm going to clean the rail out and put it all back together and see if it all works. So hopefully you can see this. I've reattached the gauge back in, tightened it all up, but you can just see little flakes of kind of dust, powder, whatever that is, from putting that on. So what I would say is, if you are putting this on, applying the PTFE tape to the gauge, is have a little inspection of the bore of this, just to make sure that there's no evidence of any grit, grime, dust, anything that could potentially go in and clog up the injector. So I'm going to give this a little clean out, and then we should be ready to go. So that's the fuel rail in. We've sort of started put the keys in, turned them. We've not hit the start button yet. We seem to be holding quite good pressure at this stage. It should then go up between sort of 5, 6, 4, well between 4 and 6 anyway when it starts. There's no leaks from here. There's no obvious anything from the injectors. So let's give it a try. So I think I've got to the bottom of the problem. So I've got everything hooked up, got pressure in the system. That pressure's been there since last night. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hook up the injector tester. I'm actually just going to plug straight into each injector, give it a little fire, and just see what that does to the pressure gauge. What I'm hoping is that if I fire one of these, we should see that drop. If I don't really see the pressure drop, then there's clearly something wrong with the flow of that injector. And then Kaizen had actually sent me some spare injectors. So if it turns out that one or two of these are not firing right, or certainly not giving me that flow, then I'll swap them out, try it again, and see if that solves the problem. So we're going to try and fire up this injector first, see what that does to the pressure gauge. So you can see that's not really done anything to the pressure gauge, so this one's suspected to be blocked. We'll try the next one. Again, it's not really moved the pressure, so that's these two have pretty much performed the same in that. Try the next one. So you can see that one made a big hell of a lot more difference than the first couple. So this one appears to be okay. We'll try the fourth one now, see how that gets on. So big difference there. So these two seem to be working. These ones don't certainly have as much flow as the first two. So I think I'm going to change these out with the ones that Kaizen sent me, and see if that solves the problem. But now that I've fired some fuel in here, when I do start the car, it does start up initially, but then it cuts out, because obviously it's not getting flow out of these two injectors. Feels like I'm on about day 14 of this. Had to wait on a few things getting delivered, which took a little bit longer than I thought. So we actually got 3 injectors from Kaizen, so thanks to those guys for that. Didn't really have to do that, but they sent some spare ones for me to try out. So what I found was, so these 3 injectors are the ones that I used from Kaizen, and I left my old one in here, the one that I thought was actually good. This was the one when we tested it, it moved the dial quite a bit. So when I fired it up, started the car, it was actually still running on 3 cylinders. So I went through a process of unclipping each of these connectors from the injectors just to see what it did. When I unclipped this one, nothing happened to the engine at all, but anytime I unclipped any of these, the engine note died almost to the point where it was going to stop. So that told me what I thought was a good injector was still not giving me the right fuel flow through it. So as I've done a few times on this change out, I reached out to the forums to see if anyone had any spare injectors lying around or for sale that I could buy. Luckily for me, I managed to get a set relatively cheap, considering you could pay £400 for a new set. So I got a set pretty cheap. I've got them fitted now. I've actually left the Kaizen ones in, and I've replaced my old injector with one from this set. I'm going to start it up, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get the car back on the road. So everything seems to be running okay. If I was to pull this out, you hear that engine note change, so that's all working with the new injector. Even getting a normal sound out the exhaust, so it's not sounding like a go-kart anymore. So, seems to have solved it. I'm not sure if you can get credit for solving your own problem, but anyway, we managed to get there in the end, and I think it does look really good. I'm really happy with how it looks in the car, especially with the red hoses and stuff. Still got a few things to do in the engine bay, but it's certainly where it's getting to where I want it to be. Thanks to everybody who's stuck to the end and watched it all the way through. You can see I had a little bit of a nightmare, but hopefully the main thing about this is that if you want to fit one of these or even any other fuel rail to your car, there's a few tips in there to avoid what I went through. So I've got a little bit of a collage at the end of the fuel rail and how it all looks in the engine bay, but until the next video, catch you all later.